Hello, hope everyone is okay. Hope everyone has been staying focused throughout these tutorials and staying safe throughout this pandemic. I'll be doing activity 4 with you guys, and activity 4 says briefly explain why the individual supply of labor curve is backward bending. Refer specifically to the substitution and income effects of a change in the wage of an individual worker. So before we get to the answers, I'd like us to look at the graph itself, the two graphs that are interlinked, and explain this concept very well. You've already done this before. This is not new to you. You've done this in labor economics, which was economics 2F in the first semester. So, the case of a backward bending supply curve. So first of all, on the y-axis, we have leisure time and working time. You're measuring two things here. So from 0 going upward, you're measuring working time. From this point, 18 hours of working time, to 0, you're measuring your working hours. Okay? So 18 hours is your maximum working hours. 630 here is your maximum income that you can earn with your working hours. So if I take, this person earns 35 pounds per hour. So if you take 35 pounds multiplied by 18 hours, you'd find that it's 630. That's his maximum income. But then this worker works 8 hours, has 8 hours of leisure and works 10 hours of working time. So meaning at this point of 8 hours of leisure time, there is also 10 hours of working time. Do you understand? Obviously 18 minus 8, 18 hours of working time minus 8 hours of leisure time means we only have 10 hours of working now. So the worker will earn 350. How? Because he's earning 35 pounds an hour for 10 hours, which will give you 350 at this. That's what he prefers. Hence, we are at point A on this income indifference curve. An income indifference curve just shows different combinations of leisure and work time that the worker can choose from. Okay. So at point A, he works 10 hours or has 8 hours of leisure time. Okay, and earns 350 for that. Okay, now let's assume that the rate per hour increases. Okay, and don't forget this R to R1 line and R2 line, these are income lines. In a way, income lines will bring you back to the concept of budget lines. Okay, which will show income lines to show the different levels of income that you will earn as you change your leisure time or your work time. Okay. So let's assume that the rate per hour increases to 50 Rand. What's going to happen? If the rate per hour increases to 50 Rand, then that means now your maximum income will be 50 times 18. Is it not? It is, right? So you will now be earning 900 pounds because it's 18 times 50, and then the income line shifts from will shift from this one, will move to R to R2 on a different indifference curve. Why? Because income has increased. 18 times 50 is definitely bigger than 18 times 35 pounds, which gave us 630. So at this point here, they should have wrote 900 just to make this more clear. It could have been 900 or any. I guess we chose these numbers so that, but it also will make sense. So then what happens? This person is earning a higher income. So there'll be two effects, that substitution effect that they're talking about, and there'll be an income effect later on. So what happens? The substitution effect, where the worker increases its working hours and decreases the leisure hours, which is the movement from point A to C. This from here to there. They said that's the substitution effect. And remember, substitution effect is always going to be some movement along an indifference curve. Because substitution, you're substituting one thing from another, but on the same indifference curve. The minute you shift to a different indifference curve, it's now an income effect, output, or even input effect. Okay, so they said you will substitute more hours, increase its working hours, and decrease its leisure hours. Why is that? Because this person is earning a higher amount of income, wants to earn more money. So obviously, if you want to earn more money, you would increase your working hours, isn't it? It makes sense. The more you work, you would earn more. But then let's assume that you're in a country like South Africa, where we have a progressive tax system. The more you earn, the more tax you are going to be taxed. So the more income tax, meaning that you have a decrease in your income, right? Because they're increasing tax, that means they're taking more and more of your money as you work. That can be discouraging for anyone. Okay, so the worker will then reduce working hours and choose a combination of income and leisure at point B. Exactly, which is there. And that is the income effect. The fact that a worker is now earning more money, but then there's a greater percentage of tax that will be taken from their income. And they then begin to wonder, well then, what is the use of me working harder and harder for more hours if more of my money will be taken away? So then the worker becomes reluctant and will reduce their working hours and choose a combination of income and leisure at point B. And then we say the movement from C to B, remember we substituted, from C to B is known as the income effect. Do you now understand? So we were supposed to explain two things, substitution and the income effect. Alright? So if you look at this graph now, this graph here is interlinked to this one in the sense that we measure wage this side, and then here we have number of working hours. As we move from 0 towards the right, we have an increase in the number of working hours. From number of working hours to 0, that's leisure. Okay, it's an increase in leisure, which makes sense. Here will be like your maximum leisure. Look at your wage, 0. Exactly, you're sitting at home, you're not earning anything. So if as wages increase and the number of working hours are increasing, do you see that? That's the substitution effect. So from point 0 to A is the substitution effect, because we did say that as this person realizes that they can earn more income by working harder or more hours, they will increase. You see? Because wages, he knows that his wages will increase. So he works harder until a certain point where he realizes that, okay, the tax is chowing away more of my income. And then he becomes reluctant. And then he starts to say, I will substitute working hours for leisure now. Because now he realizes that the opportunity cost of leisure is high, meaning that I'm better off spending more time not at work, being able to maybe, go on a holiday, go shopping, spend time with your family. Anything that's going to give you leisure, you would want to do, than to work hard and have your money taken away by taxes. So from point A going onwards, this is the income effect. Alright? Where he will now decrease the number of working hours, even though his wage is increasing because of the progressive tax. Okay, now let's go back to our tutorial. Now the substitution effect, like I said, let me show both of these so that as I explain it, you'll be able to understand. Okay, just give me a minute as I move the graph inward so that you can see it. All right. Okay, that's perfect. So remember, this person will have a higher wage. Remember, this is it, the increase in wages. So substitution effect, we will say that higher wage means worker will substitute leisure hours for more working hours. That is evident here. As you can see, more wage, increasing of number of working hours. Okay, but you can also see it on the last slide. From point A to C, the number of working hours has decreased. This person went from 8 hours of leisure time to maybe, at this point, I would say maybe it's 6 hours of, not 6 hours, it's 10 hours of leisure time now, with 8 hours of working time. Okay, because I did say that the more you move from this point going down, you have more leisure. From 0 going up, it's more working time. Okay, so it's evident on both graphs, but I'll just show the backward bending for now, the backward bending supplier curve. Also go through your textbook if you want more clarification on this. And then we say that there's a positive relationship between wages and the number of working hours. Of course, if you look at this graph here, it has a positive slope, does it not? It does, because as wage increases, the number of working hours is increasing. So that explains the substitution effect. I can then say from point 0, I'll just put it here that this is from point 0 to A. I'll just say from 0 to A on this curve is a substitution effect. And there's a positive relationship between wages and number of working hours. And then the income effect. Since, remember, we talked about how after this person earns a higher wage, which was the £50, there comes higher tax. Let's assume that this person lives in South Africa, or a country that uses progressive tax. So the higher income tax will make the worker cut back on the greater number of working hours. That's what you're seeing here. You see, he's no more increasing. Because if there was no income effect, this graph would just go straight up. Meaning the more wage they would earn, to millions and millions of pounds, whatever it is, they will still increase their number of working hours. But then that's not true. They will start to want to spend their money, go on a holiday, shopping, whatever it is. So we say that the worker will cut back on a greater number of working hours because the opportunity cost of leisure is too high. Alright, that is the economic reasoning of the shift from the backward bending curve. Why the economic reasoning of a higher wage but wanting to have more leisure and less, or just say less number of working hours, which is more leisure. And then we say there's a negative relationship between wages and the number of working hours after a certain level of income. That certain level of income is here, the PN1. There starts being a negative relationship. It starts to slope negatively. Remember, this is a positive slope. This is a negative slope. Okay. And therefore, the labor supply curve has a positive slope up to a certain level of income, then negative after that level of income. Yes. So we're saying that on the backward bending curve, we have from 0 to A up to a certain level of income. I would increase my number of working hours as wages increase. That's substitution effect. After that certain level of income, I start to decrease my number of working hours as wages increase due to the tax. And due to that tax, the opportunity cost of leisure becomes too high. Okay. So I hope you guys understood that. You can also go into the textbook for more clarity on this subject, this graph. But as I said, you've done it before in labor economics. Okay, so activity 5, moving on. This question deals with the concept of elasticity of substitution. Complete the following table. So the shape of isoquant, sign of elasticity of substitution. So elasticity of substitution is based on the marginal rate of substitution, of technical substitution. It is based on the MRTS, marginal rate of technical substitution. What is that? That is where the substitution between labor and capital. Okay, using more labor or using more capital in producing certain products. Okay, and remember, the shape of an isoquant is usually a curve. Remember, if you look at your past Tuts, you realize that an isoquant, or even in the tutorials, in the slides, you realize that an isoquant is more of a curve, and then you substitute from there. So then they say if the shape of your isoquant is a straight line, meaning that, okay, I'll try to show you. If the shape of your isoquant is a straight line, I'll just try to find straight line graph, straight line isoquant here. And wait, give me a sec. Alright, there you go. These, in a way, are isoquants. If you look at these have straight lines, don't they? They have straight lines instead of curves that you'd usually have. It will be a curve here, and you'd substitute between capital and labor with the marginal rate of substitution. But then now they say it has a straight line. Regard the whole composition of the graph, I'm just trying to show you that it can have a straight line instead of a normal isoquant curve, which is more of a curve. It's more like a production possibility curve. Alright, so if it has a straight line, what is the sign of elasticity of substitution? The sign is in infinite. Alright? The sign is infinite. If you know the infinity sign, you know infinity sign is like an 8, but it's more horizontal. Okay? So, infinite. Why is it infinite? It is infinite because your marginal rate of technical substitution is constant. If you remember very well in mathematics, the slope of a straight line is constant. You remember when you'd have to draw a straight line, you'd find the slope, and you find that the slope maybe is -2. And you see that if the slope is -2, that means the curve would be negatively sloping, but it would just be straight, to show that on each point, no matter where on the graph, the slope will be -2. So hence the sign of elasticity of substitution is infinite. And then if the shape of the isoquant is rectangular, what would be the sign of elasticity of substitution? So the sign of elasticity of substitution would be 0. Why? Why would it be 0? It is 0 because of the fixed input proportions, meaning that when you're producing your product, you would have fixed proportions of input. Fixed proportions of inputs means that in each product, no matter what, you always have fixed proportions of input. You always have a fixed number of labor and a fixed number of capital forever. So you don't have to even substitute for anything. You already know that I'm going to have maybe 5 units of labor, 10 units of capital, no matter what. Hence, you won't have a sign of elasticity of substitution. It will just be 0 because you never substitute between capital and labor. So the first one was infinite because your marginal rate of substitution is constant. Yes, you are substituting between, or you're trying to say that you're substituting between capital and labor, but constantly. It doesn't switch from one. If this was a curve, it would have changed, right? Because on a curve, the slope is different on each point, or the marginal rate of technical substitution is different at each point. It will never be constant, but on a straight line, it is. Okay, so this was just for me to explain why is infinite 0, but the answer, you just write infinite with the infinity sign, and then here it's 0. But I just wanted to explain why we say that. Alright, and then for activity 6, says assume the following figure and answer the following questions. So this is one of the, I think it's the second graph in your slide. So this graph is based on a perfect competitive market. If you remember a perfect competitive market, the demand and supply is the boss here. They manage everything. They're the ones who make sure that no participant has control over prices, whether it's prices of inputs or the prices of the final goods. That is all determined by demand and supply or the market forces. Okay, so the first question will say, briefly explain why the marginal fixed cost is horizontal to the variable input axis. They're just trying to say, why is this line, marginal fixed cost, why is it horizontal? The reason is because, firstly, this is a perfect competition market. So no participant or the firm has no control over the wage. Has no control over the wage, because that's why it is, and that's why it is perfectly elastic. So firm has no control over the wages, which is the marginal factor cost. Remember, factor cost is the price of your factors. So in this case, all right, let me fix the mic. So in this case, your factor cost would be your wage. Firm has no control over wages because this is a perfectly competitive market. All right, and hence sorry about that. Hence, the marginal fixed cost is perfectly elastic. Alright, so it makes sense. The fact that you know the market that this graph represents will make everything easier for you, because it's all about background knowledge of the market, what you have learned about this market. Then everything will be much more easier for you. And then the second question asks, okay, I just want to say over wages. So wages is your marginal fixed cost, marginal factor cost. Sorry. And then the second question says, explain briefly how the marginal revenue product values are determined. The marginal revenue product values, remember, this is in your slides. This graph can be found in your slides on slide 5. Okay, the explanation is there. Also go through your textbook for this. Okay, so explain briefly how the marginal revenue products are determined. So the marginal revenue product is equal to the price of the final product. Of the final product multiplied by marginal revenue, the marginal revenue of the input, the marginal revenue of the input. If you look at the slides, it's more of, in mathematics, it's more of MR times the price of, I want to just think this, the price of F final product. Okay. Alright, so and then that's it. That's how your marginal revenue product, MRP's marginal revenue product. Okay, so that's how it is. This curve was determined. Alright, moving on to the next question here. What is the equilibrium condition that the firm needs to apply when deciding on the number of variable input to employ. So this also is similar to in the perfect competitive market, where the marginal revenue would be equal to the marginal cost. That's your optimal production point. Remember that. So, but on this graph, that point that they will decide to, the point that will be most optimal for them would be the where your marginal revenue product is equal to the marginal fixed cost. Okay, so where the marginal revenue product is equal to the marginal fixed cost. So where here at point A, the marginal fixed cost is equal to marginal revenue product, that point there is an optimal point. Okay, or as they say here, the equilibrium condition. Okay, so every point A, also B, so is C, so is D. Okay, that's not an optimal point because there's no marginal fixed cost there. Okay, all right, and then moving on to the next question, they say assume Pn1. If the firm applies the equilibrium condition, what is the profit or loss position for the firm? Economic profit, normal profit, or economic loss? So this is how you will know. At point A, the marginal fixed, the average revenue product curve. Average revenue product, that's like your income for each product on average. So the average revenue product is above the marginal fixed cost of each product. That shows that there is an economic profit. So when your average revenue product is above the marginal fixed cost, then there is an economic profit there. Okay, if the average revenue product was actually below this, then there will be an economic loss. Okay, like what's below that will be economic loss. So then we would say here that there is an economic profit. Why? Because the average revenue product curve is above the marginal fixed cost. Last question of the tutorial, guys. At what employment level and marginal factor cost level will the firm realize normal profits? Now, normal profits, you should know it by now. It will be a point where your marginal fixed cost is equal to your average revenue product curve, where this curve and this one meet. There's only one place where they actually meet. So that would be point B at price of N2 and marginal fixed cost 2. At this point, that is a point B, that is a point where the marginal fixed cost is equal to your average revenue product. They are tangent, as you can see there. Okay, that is where they meet. Unlike this point, the average revenue product is above it. So hence it can be a normal profit at point A. So they said at what employment level and marginal factor cost level. So the employment level is NB. Okay, let me write the B so that you don't get confused. So it's NB and Employment level will be NB, and the marginal factor cost level will be MFC2, right? You can write the, okay, I guess I shouldn't be. So this is point B. Right. And if you go through your slides, you also realize that there's also economic loss here. So at marginal factor cost 4, there is economic loss. Why? Because marginal factor cost is above the average revenue product. Okay, so we focused on this average revenue product, not the argumented one or the modified one. Okay, we focus on this one because this would mean that your marginal factor cost will also have to have like that asterisk there. Then we'll have that when we would analyze them the same. So yes, that's all. Thank you for listening, guys. Also, if you still have any questions or queries, go through your textbook, go through your slides thoroughly, and consult your tutors. We are always here to help. And that'll be all for today. Thank you so much.